minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. As the Scottish Government's motion states, and I quote, social isolation and loneliness can affect anyone at any age or stage of life. It also quotes, facing adversity and preventative action is vital to ensure that the negative mental health consequences are addressed. And that's why today I'm going to focus my comments on the experience of one of my constituents who is campaigning for change so that no child grieves alone. His name is Ben Kane, a young person from Gourock in my constituency who, during his third year of high school, was bereaved after his sibling passed away. We talk about bereavement as a majority experience, but I'm sure that if everyone in the chamber today was asked to picture a bereaved person, we would typically picture someone who is older. Rarely do we think of children as being bereaved. The reasons for this are obvious, but according to a recent study by the Children and Young People's Centre for Justice and the University of Strathclyde, more than half of Scottish children have experienced bereavement of a close family member by the age of 8. Now, being bereaved is difficult at any age, but for children and young people who are at a key stage in their development, it can be particularly hard to navigate growing up whilst grieving. Now, Ben, motivated by his own experiences and with the support of local organisations such as Mind Mosaic, Children and Family Therapies, and also their Gowan Hospice, has now gone on to set up a counselling support group in his school for pupils affected by bereavement. This is the first group of its kind locally, and Ben is campaigning to see this initiative rolled out across Inverclyde and also across Scotland as a whole. Now, I recently wrote to the new Minister for Children and Young People about Ben's campaign, which has led to him receiving several accolades, including the UK Rotary Young Citizen of the Year, after he met with me to ask me for my support. Now, I'll be honest to say that, whilst the response I received heaped lots of praise upon Ben for his commitment to this cause, it lacked any detail about what the Scottish Government is doing to support children and young people affected by bereavement. I accept that the Scottish Government is considering how best to implement the 7 recommendations from the National Childhood Bereavement Project report, which is Growing Up Grieving, which was commissioned by the Scottish Government and published in September 2022. But what Ben is already doing at Clydeview Academy in Gourock, and in conjunction with other services, can actually help feed into that work. For example, Recommendation 4 from the report states that every school in Scotland must have a 4-point approach to bereavement. The report elaborates by saying that, and I quote, currently, bereavement policies and procedures are set at the discretion of each individual school. This means that some pupils are well prepared to respond to the needs of a pupil experiencing bereavement, while others are not, creating a disparity in support across the country. This is exactly why Ben wants to see the support group he initiated rolled out across the country, to provide a safe space for pupils to come together to listen to and support one another and help them on their journey with grief. No one should be alone and feel isolated. Now, this Growing Up Grieving report talks up the approach of peer-to-peer support, saying, and I quote, people with lived experiences of childhood bereavement told the project stories of how they struggled to find other people their age who could understand what they were going through.
Will the member give way?
Sure.
Bob Doris.
I thank the member for giving way. I should put the record that I chair the cross-party palliative care in this Parliament, Presiding Officer. One of the things those involved in palliative care are interested to see is the new palliative care and end-of-life strategy to have a bereavement element. And that report you suggest, Mr McMillan, sounds very powerful, but strategies and reports and local authorities and schools, there should be a connectivity between strategies. So would you maybe agree with me that it would be good to have that new, fresh national bereavement strategy to include the types of things that you're saying to Parliament today for the sake of Ben and others like him?
And Stuart McMillan, I can give you the time back.
Thank you, President Officer. I do agree with Bob Doris on that particular suggestion, because I think fundamentally, it's as Ben Kane has put to me, certainly on the occasion I met him, but certainly I've met him a couple of times since also, that no matter kind of what aspects are there, we need to have that understanding of what young people are going through. And certainly we continually in this chamber talk about lived experiences and engaging with younger people. So I absolutely agree with your comments, Mr Boris. The project engaged with groups that operate in a similar way to Ben's and learned that through building a shared community, they have both individually helped to break down the taboo of being a young griever and stopped others from suffering alone. Now, there are testimonies to the power of peer-to-peer support, showing that the importance of children and young people being able to navigate their life after a bereavement with others on a similar journey. As adults, we can also influence how children and young people grieve by our ability to actually openly talk about subjects like death. Now, the project spoke with adults who shared candidly that they avoided talking about death with their children and young people in their lives to protect them from the harsh realities of a world in which the people they love are not alive anymore. And that is entirely understandable, but although these adults acted with the best of intentions, the project heard first-hand experiences from children and young people about how this avoidance tactic actually contributed to their inability to process grief at a later stage in their life. So it's important that adults do talk to children and young people about death, and crucially, that we don't soften our language so much that it affects a child's understanding of the reality of death. Now, by being honest and open, we're actually helping to reduce the loneliness and isolation that can follow a bereavement, and instead we can actually help empower future generations to grieve in a much healthier and understanding way. Now, during the Minister's opening speech, the Minister stated, and I quote, "It's all about the communities and how we maintain them." Notwithstanding the positive work already been delivered by the Scottish Government, I urge the Scottish Government to provide its response to the recommendations of the National Childhood Bereavement Coordinator final report. Schools offering learning and teaching on bereavement, as per the Scottish Government reply, is one thing, but if it were enough, Ben Kane wouldn't have felt the need to establish his own counselling support group for pupils affected by bereavement. Tackling isolation and loneliness must also consider Scotland's young people dealing with bereavement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr